requirements on developments at the entrances to the community. So there's only really a few things that make a difference on that. And so we'll highlight those things that we're proposing to be included in this amendment, and feel free to stop me and ask questions at any time. I've listed the sections that we're including in this proposed amendment that are relevant to creating a new overlay. So let me just explain. An overlay is not a new zone. It is just exactly what it says. You're overlaying additional requirements on top of underlying zoning. So everything underneath remains in place. But now whatever has to go there has to meet a double layer, not just the first floor, but the second floor requirements. So that's what an overlay would do. We have not yet proposed specifically where those properties are, but I will review with you here in just a little bit where we are proposing to have those added. Once code is created for the gateway overlay, then we will come back shortly with a proposal to actually apply those. And that is very similar, or the same thing as a zone change. But we'll go through that same process with a public hearing and add that overlay on top of the zoning of that property. And so, as listed here, it's just really adding a development standard that will handle several things such as circulation, aesthetics, environmental sustainability, and safety. So we'll go through those here. First off, there were some suggestions from City Council that we eliminate some uses as being permitted in these areas so that there can be the most attractive type use possible. This may be a subjective request, whether it would be necessary to include or exclude some of these uses, but the ones that we have listed here are automobile related, so sales or repair or car wash or all of those type of things would be prohibited. Pawn shops, retail for auto parts and tire sales, sexually oriented businesses, and warehouse flex. So that's what's on our list right now. It may change according to your recommendations or what City Council ends up with, but that's what we have at this time. Additional requirements include landscaping. That will be one of the big factors that provide a visual impact. And so we're looking at requiring additional landscaping above what's already required, including raised accent planters, cluster of native grasses, small groves of trees, water features, and other similar features may be substituted. And 50% of entrance areas and building street sides shall include streetscaping. We've got a long list of the type of streetscape, so that's street furniture or public art or a lot of different things that fall into that category. Also, some additional requirements that are being proposed are no parking on arterial collector street sides of buildings. So all you see is the landscaping in the building. Signage shall follow a uniform design plan for appearance and style. Development plans to be reviewed by Planning Commission and approved by City Council. Building standards for height, setbacks, transparency, materials, entrances, and facades are included in that as well. There is a section on these additional building standards that apply to waterfront properties or water buffer areas. And so we're just including the gateway into that section. So it's both water and gateway. Now, some of those are going to be the same thing anyway, but some of them won't. Any questions right now? That's what we have proposed on the code itself. And we will be coming back, like I say, once the code has been approved, then we will be coming back with where we think we should apply these gateways. And so what we're thinking at this time, those areas that are circled in red are the areas that we're considering for application. So I'll just point those out. So this red circle is on Pioneer Crossing, starting at 2300 West and Lehigh, or at the very entrance, our east boundary along Pioneer Crossing. There's also a consideration that is not shown on this map here that possibly we may want to go across the river to the west and include that area too, because it almost seems like a double entrance there. So we may look at that as well. Another one would be at East Crossroads Boulevard. So we've recently looked at River's Edge development on the north side of the Crossroads Boulevard and up against the lake shore, the river shore, Jordan River. And then across the street, a new plat has been approved for Steel Ridge. It's just barely doing some earthwork over there if you've been on that road recently. We don't have any site plans yet. We're hoping to get this in before we do, but we'll see who beats the race there. Otherwise, we're looking at the north end of the community along Redwood Road. So there is a circle in an area that's not currently in the city boundaries, but there has been discussion with Lehigh and some developers that they may want to have a boundary adjustment and bring that land into Saratoga Springs simply because of utility alignments and availability. Yeah.
That's not part of us, yeah.
Right. It makes sense for it to be in Saratoga Springs for many reasons. So we're anticipating that, so that when that happens, then we want to apply the overlay on that. Then otherwise, just below that on both sides of Redwood Road. Then as we go westward to Eagle Mountain on S73, but on both sides of the street there, we're get up to Eagle Mountain's boundaries. And then on Pony Express, two areas. We have a community commercial zoned area. We wouldn't want to go so far west as we could with our boundaries because it's residential and developed and it wouldn't make a lot of sense at this time to do something there. But in this area here where we have a cohesive boundary on both sides, then that's what we would be looking at. And then further south, in our general plan, we have identified those areas around Pelican Point, which some of it is, or most of that right now is not in city boundaries, but is identified for future annexation areas. And the general plan designated those as mixed waterfront uses. And so we would anticipate an overlay on those properties as well. So like I say, these we will be coming back with specific property application requests or application of the overlay on specific properties. And we'll be seeing that soon. Any questions?
This is a public hearing, so I'm going to go ahead and open this up to the public for comments. I'll close this for public comment, and then I'll open this up to the Planning Commission. Commissioner McConkey was first, so I'll let him make his comments. And then Commissioner Ryan.
Thank you. I really am excited about this. So I really like the direction this is going. And I didn't anticipate this, but when I was reading through this, it just made me excited. I really appreciate that we also consider the southern end. I just think it just makes great sense. I think it's great for the city, so I appreciate that. I had a few questions. You answered some of my questions already. Just clarification on what an overlay is exactly. I think I did understand, just needed some clarification. And also my question about the boundaries that we're still working on what those boundaries look like. Mm-hmm. I had a question, and I'm going to have to scroll down here to, it mentions gateway overlay means a zoning designation that may be applied to certain properties in or near community entrances. I guess that I guess that question is answered by the fact that we still have boundaries, specific boundaries coming, that we still need to figure that out, so. Had a question if the overlay zone is intended to have specific balance. That's answered my question also, it being an overlay. That question's answered. Oh, what was the intent of excluding the uses or the I guess it's, what's it called? Is it called uses? Permitted uses. The intent is to preserve those things that I guess best fit the community as a whole. Is that?
Yeah.
I don't disagree. In fact, I wondered if the list should have been a little bit longer on what to exclude, but I didn't have time to look through all of our permitted uses to see what else might be excluded.
Well, if you don't have, or you haven't had time to look at it yet tonight, but you want to still do that, I would say, send me an email. How about looking at this, and then we can bring it up to city council, say, hey, there's some other possibilities you might consider. So I think it started off as a fairly small list. It was mostly car wash and a couple other auto repair. But
I think those are
as we
fit.
looked at it, it kind of expanded. We had a couple of councilmen who met with us and gave us some recommendations. And so we looked at it and talked about it. So it expanded a little from there, but it doesn't mean it will be the ultimate final comprehensive list of what we might want to do. But that's what we've got right now.
Yeah, well, and I like that list of exclusion. There's landscaping mentioned, number 6, mentioned that needed to match adjacent areas. And so my question, so is it 6A1, be compatible with, oh, there you go, be compatible with adjacent land uses and landscaping. The question that was raised in my mind is that adjacent landscaping already in place or landscaping that was previously approved and maybe not yet installed? So if we've got two developments next to each other, is there going to create any conflict? Or if there's an undeveloped lot
Yeah.
and they come
So
in?
we would consider landscaping part of a developed lot. So if it's just native weeds and dirt, we would not consider that landscaping.
Okay.
But otherwise, we're just trying to make some flow so it doesn't look like a
I like
stark
that,
contrast.
Yeah, I like that. Okay, and that answers that question. I did notice we're missing the word "of" in section C after where it says 50%. That's just a little typo thing in 6C. I'd like to include in section C also that the streetscape elements must reflect or portray natural features of Saratoga Springs as determined by some specific standard or is approved by the city council, like maybe native wildlife, water, lake mountain, native grasses, native scenery, something to help preserve the unique Saratoga Springs atmosphere that we're hoping to preserve.
Okay.
And I had a question, why do we have redundant parking sections?
They're different sections. One is the parking chapter, and the other is referring to that in our new section that we're creating for the Gateway Overlay. So it's kind of a cross-reference type.
Okay. I wrote down, I'm concerned about it in 19.16.10. wherever that is. I wrote down on 1A1, I'm concerned about applying the same 5-foot setback requirement for each story above 35 feet to the gateway overlay, which I think the same way for the waterfront. My question is, will this discourage developers from building certain buildings and preventing certain businesses from coming to the areas that might actually be desirable? I'm wondering what would be the core purpose of the 5-foot setback in gateway overlay?
Well, that's a good question. We did have the waterfront buffer standards already set, and we figured that those applied generally and
The
and it
application?
would be easy application, but you do pose a good question. Is that something that might slow down or prohibit a developer with a good product? So,
And it may not be an issue, just depends on how tall they're building that they want to build, of course. But, I mean, in my mind, I'm thinking a nice office building's got some great features, but then they get so high, they want to do a 6-story building. And now they got to do this setback, they're going to lose office space. Is it going to be enough to discourage that? So anyway, that was the question that was raised in my mind. I do like the architectural difference and the different elevations, if you will. I think that's great. I think that would be worth, preserving or doing something with, but I don't want to discourage something that we really want here. Something to, think about, talk to council. And 1D2, I feel like the section needs to be reworded to clarify its meaning.
which section was that?
19.16.10, 1D1, actually. And
And
did I write down the right section? Did this get changed? Maybe I completely wrote down the, oh no, there it is. There it is, yeah. 1D1, yeah, entrances shall be as prominent on any waterfront side of a building as on the street or gateway overlay, arterial or collector street side. I'm kind of struggling to know what exactly that's trying to communicate. Sense.
Sarah, can you pull that section up? So what we did on that, we just added verbiage of gateway overlay to what was already language existing for the waterfront buffer. So the flow of verbiage on the waterfront buffer as existed.
And I think that part's fine. It's just, I think maybe the way that we added gateway overlay, it just kind of makes it a little confusing as to what exactly we're trying to require and want to see in the gateway overlay. And
I think in some instances, the gateway overlay and waterfront buffer, there was no problem to say both is the same way, whereas I think in that instance, we needed to call it out a little differently because I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, anyway. I'm going to go on to the next one here for sake of time. And on E1, does the planning world have a standard for the term pedestrian scale? I'm not exactly sure what that means.
I think we tried to include verbiage with that right after. Isn't there something that clarifies what that means? Verbiage right after that? Yeah, I think that's what we're referring to.
Is that what we're trying to get at?
Yeah.
Okay.
And again, that was verbiage that was inserted previously, so we're not changing that, but I think that is the following back of the building is what we're
And I guess you had included a section earlier about what we want on that street side, so
Yes.
that'd be good enough.
I have it up now, so which section is it?
19.16.10 D1. Entrances shall be as prominent on any waterfront side of a building as on the street or gateway overlay or arterial or collector street side.
I can see what you're saying. That could be better as two sets of that. Or have one set of waterfront. Gateway. For the roads.
Okay, that might be helpful.
Yeah, we can rewrite that into 2 sentences, make it more clear.
That would work.
So I don't know how you're gonna.
Yeah, the comparison's fine. One sentence is fine. It just is confusing as to what the meaning is. And it almost seems like we're comparing, I don't know. I don't even know how to explain it. It's just, I've read it over and over and I'm not exactly sure. I think I know what's being said. We just basically want both sides to look the same, right?
Well, right, so we,
So the sentence without the change is intended that the waterfront side will be treated like the front of a building as well as the street side. And then with this change, it sounds like a comparison rather than in the gateway overlay, street sides need to have a front facade. And if you also are facing waterfront, you also need to have a front facade.
Yeah, because the gateway overlay area could be waterfront or not. So, I think it could be written more
Okay.
clearly.
That would be helpful, I think. And number 2, I just have to say, I really appreciate the view corridor. I think that's a great thing. I just had to say that. Do we, the definition of, if you will, of waterfront development is just a development that's in the waterfront overlay zone, is that right? Or overlay?
It should be, do we have a definition for waterfront?
What I had in my mind was thinking about is we have this big development and you have that view corridor through the whole development, and next to it we have 3 developments, separate developments. Is the first one a waterfront development and the next 2 are not? So now we have a shorter view corridor, or does that make sense what I'm? And maybe that's question is neither here nor there based on what we have available to develop over there.
So really, we have this buffer overlay, and so we're calling development in that buffer overlay the waterfront development. So we don't, sorry, I'm pulling it up just to double check, but I'm pulling it up to see if we define it. Yeah, we don't define it. We just have this overlay water buffer requirements.
So we're assuming that we know it's either the river or the lake.
So it might be helpful to use the terms that we have in there so the developers know exactly what's being expected. And then the city has something to stand behind and say, well, this is pretty clear right here, because that makes sense.
I
Either
guess
defining
I'm still
water-
trying to pin down what your suggestion is.
Either defining waterfront development, what that means, or using the term, any development within that waterfront overlay. And that, what that might do is preserve that view corridor for as far as what we're imagining.
Okay?
Well, I thought the view corridor was already in the waterfront overlay.
It is.
So if that's the case, then I don't
It
know why
is,
it
it's-
needs to be further defined.
If we're,
Because if it's going to be in the water, in the overlay, they have to have the view.
Yeah, I guess my concern is if we don't have a definition of what waterfront development is, I see an open door for some developers to want to argue.
But if it's already in the overlay, then they have to do it anyway. Right? So if it's not part of the overlay, then they don't. Yeah. Otherwise-
I'm all for
Because there's no
clarity
waterfront
with all the opposition that I see and have seen in
it's
the
just-
past.
No, it's just.
I'm all for clarity, and it just makes it so easy for, for the
Right.
city to be able to say, this is really what
But there's no waterfront zone.
No.
There's an overlay.
overlay, so
If
waterfront
in the overlay,
development.
then you're required to have a view corridor.
So maybe just add the word each waterfront overlay. I don't know, but just something to,
It's called waterfront buffer, isn't it?
Well, I think too, what I'm seeing here is we say buffer overlay.
Buffer overlay.
So we don't say waterfront overlay. So it's a good point that, but then in the waterfront section, we have a waterfront buffer requirement. And then this section, under site and architectural design standards, says buffer overlay, but doesn't say waterfront buffer overlay. So it's a good,
So maybe
it's a
we
good
just-
clarification to
terminology.
make
Yeah.
to avoid confusion.
Maybe we just
And-
add the word waterfront in front of buffer.
Well, yeah, and so the thing he's pointing out is we're saying waterfront development, but in other parts of our code, it's called waterfront buffer. And so for consistency, we should probably be using that throughout in here as well. And we say it somewhat, but also just the title of this chapter says buffer overlay and not waterfront. So we're losing some consistency.
Yeah, but I just feel that as far as what a developer is required to do, it's clearly stated in the overlay section, the waterfront overlay section. So for consistency, yeah, but as far as what the developer is required to do, pretty clear.
It is. Some of the challenges, we do get challenges like this. We get challenges like, well, your code doesn't say that specifically, so I don't have to specifically do that. So we do get challenges where we need, where it's better for us if we are as consistent as possible.
Yeah. So we'll work on the verbiage there, so.
that sounds great, thanks. That was everything I had. Again, I just want to reiterate that I really like what you did with this. So, that's it.
Thank you, Commissioner McConkey. We have Commissioner Ryan and then Commissioner Kilgore. Commissioner Ryan.
Thanks, Mr. Chair, and also thanks to Commissioner McConkey. I appreciate the level of granular detail. Because I read something like that and didn't think twice about it. So I really actually appreciate that, being able to catch those things and understand those things better. So I appreciate the discussion. I'd like to go kind of back out and more at a high level. I've got just a couple questions to help me understand. One, thanks for putting this together. Thanks for the patience and working through our questions on this. I think it's, I agree with Commissioner McConkey. I like the idea quite a bit. Do these overlays exist elsewhere? Is this a common practice in planning with other communities across the state?
Not necessarily common as a gateway overlay, although that does occur. Provo has some, we actually look at verbiage.
Awesome.
But
Okay.
there are overlays of various kinds that communities use.
Awesome. And then I think I got a little bit of insight into where we came up with the list of the prohibited uses. That was in conversations and in determining winners and losers in that process, I guess. Like, I don't want to open a car dealership in
Recommendation.
Saratoga anymore.
Council went through the list and said, well, what fits in that same concept? And that's how it got built.
Is that list open? I'm just trying to figure out, again, whenever like you make a list, I'm trying to figure out more, is it more appropriate just to come out and say, like, this is what we're looking for in these areas versus what we're not looking for? Because, we have a list. I don't think anyone's argued that this is a comprehensive list and it's open for discussion. But when we look at the things that are prohibited, obviously I said it in jest, but it'd be really hard to open a car dealership in any one of these areas. or anything to do with cars in general. But then we allow for truck and large equipment repair are not captured in a prohibited use. So I'm just trying to understand the distinctions. And we say, well, we don't want a sexually oriented business. Great, but we're saying tobacco shops, tattoo parlors. We're just kind of drawing these lines on things around we're comfortable with. And I just want to make sure that we're understanding why and where we're drawing these lines. And then again, another example is like, well, we don't want the pawn shops, but an impound yard is fine.
A what yard?
An impound yard or a
Okay,
recycling facility. So again, like, I don't know if exclusions or inclusions are better when we start going down this list and looking through the prohibited and or permissible uses. But it was just interesting to me to say, hey, this is where we've ended up, A through J. And then there's all these other things that, you know, hey, we don't want to have a sexually oriented business, but we could smoke it up and go get tattoos while we're at it in our gateway district. And so I just think we got to,
well, those are very good comments, and I appreciate you bringing those up. What we did is we went down our list of uses. Now, some of those are very broad categories, such as retail. And we did identify a few things that we're saying retail, tire sales, and, you know, those particular things. But maybe we need to get more specific on that. We don't have in our code a detailed list of all potential retail outlets that could exist in the world. So, but if we are identifying now or at any time some that we think ought to be included here, we can call those out and put them with the retail, these specific ones. And so I've written down the ones that you mentioned.
yeah, I appreciate that, Ken. And these aren't, you know, I agree with you. We can't anticipate every possible, you know, scenario or things that may come to the city. I just went off of the list of things that we've already listed in uses, right? And so you all are the pros. You all have, I think, a really good vision around this. I would just highly encourage, like, take a second look and maybe decide what it is we really want out of these gateway corridors. The other thing I had a question around is anything, particularly on the one that's on the north end of town. This is for Commissioner Barton. Anything that's on the north end of town. Are there some of the? It seemed like some of these uses were already in that area. So, like, as far as like grandfathering things that may already be, like when we're talking about automotive repair, there's already, you know, we already have a car wash up there. We already have an automotive repair up there. We already have temp storage up there, and that outdoor equipment storage and sales is one of these prohibited things that we, you know, going back to that list, like that's okay here, but not here. So I worry about some of those things that may be already in, or if we need to add grandfathered language into the amendment, I would posit that for consideration by staff.
I think grandfather language doesn't need to be inserted whenever we do there's a lot of non-conforming uses that can occur, and so I think that would just be assumed and understood that it's grandfathered.
Okay. So again, just, it's already happened, I guess, in some of these areas. I guess we're just trying to limit more of it, which is fine.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that I'm not an expert in terms of scale and ovals and circles on the way that the map was presented, but there's certainly some size variations. So we're saying in this corridor, we just want that big a circle, and now in that corridor, we want this long of oval into these gateways. And I'm just kind of wondering the reasoning behind it versus like a standard, hey, as you come into our city, we want X amount of, you know, half a mile or 3/4 of a mile, whatever it is, as you come into these gateways.
So what we did was we identified parcel boundaries as they exist right today, and we just
Okay.
it's a real rough and dirty look at where we might possibly apply these. But I think you're right. We're going to want to shrink those down so they make sense as to how much area are we actually covering in the gateway area. So it could likely be that we're going to not follow parcel boundaries when we apply the overlay, that if it's a great big, like the one on Pony Express where the SLR properties are, that's quite a bit of frontage on Pony Express, and I don't think we need to consider all of that there. It's just that's part of the piece that is on the map, so we just hurried and did a thing. But I think what we'll do is we will identify more specifically if it makes sense to include the entire parcel, then yeah, we'll do that. But if it's a large one, it doesn't make sense, and we'll draw a boundary based on an approximate size of what we're looking at with other properties in the area.
That's awesome. I appreciate the background to that. That's just something I just picked up on as in terms of a difference. I believe that's all I have, Mr. Chair, so thank you for the time.
Thank you, Commissioner Ryan. Commissioner Kilgore, and then Commissioner Burns.
So the previous commissioners have already covered some of the questions that I had already. In general agreement, I really like the concept, like the idea of it. There are probably have to work through some of the practical issues as brought up by Commissioner Ryan and Commissioner McConkey. But I was wondering, so has the city council or, through the planning stage, has the staff identified what they're looking, I mean, what kind of a vision or what kind of an image, or is there like a concrete example of what you're looking for as far as what it looks like, what a gateway looks like?
No.
Not yet. Okay. Yeah, I was just, because if it's going to be, so I don't want to pick on a particular city, but I remember when I first moved to Utah County, I thought that, because I'm just navigationally challenged, my wife never lets me drive when I'm with her. So I understand that's probably part of the problem, but when you're driving like from Orem and you're going towards Linden, it's like 800 north, 1200 north, and then suddenly it becomes 800 south because the cities have merged. And I've always thought there's just no difference. It's just become one megalopolis. So having a gateway sounds nice. I mean, it creates that perimeter, it creates that character and everything. Now, I don't know if we'll ever be merged with Alberta, or any of the southern, and so it may not be as important, but it'd be kind of nice to have a vision of what it should look like. And that will then, I think, help guide what kind of businesses we want there. I totally agree. We have, we already have some businesses like that were mentioned that will have to be grandfathered in. But if we're not going to, if we're envisioning a place where it's kind of like a monument sign or something with some landscaping, then we don't maybe want a mile of cars, but then that should include trucks. That should include all those other things.
Right.
So I think maybe we should be a little bit more heavy-handed, but not necessarily have a huge overlay and just say like within, 1,000 feet or 500 feet or whatever makes sense, whatever the vision is, that area, whatever business you have, it doesn't matter what business you have, but you have to dedicate that amount just based on the fact that we designate it as a gateway. And so maybe that overlay is not necessarily the whole parcel, but rather just kind of like what we do with sight lines. When you're going into a neighborhood, we have sight triangles, not sight lines. I'm sorry, your line of sight, yeah, like sight triangles where here and here up to a certain amount of feet, you can only do this. You can't put a big tree, or you can't put maybe something like that. That way, it doesn't matter what business you have. We don't care about the permitted use doesn't matter, but you have to dedicate a certain portion of that property for the gateway, for a gateway look, whatever that is. And I think that might make it easier than saying we could permit this, but you can't have that, and then you end up having, a pawn shop, which may not fit the vision. If it fits the vision, fine, but it just seems like if we are picking and choosing and we just happen to miss something, then you have a truck dealership but not a car dealership. Or you have either, but they have to dedicate a certain amount of space for that, for that gateway vision. So, I mean, maybe that's another approach. I don't know if that would work either, but I like the idea. I'm just wondering, how do we make it practical without having to have all these non-permitted uses that we can't possibly, anticipate, but still have that separation. So anyway, that's my...
Okay. When we bring forward our proposal of application of the overlay, we'll get into that a little bit more. I think that what you're suggesting might make sense in a lot of cases. There might be instances, though,
Right.
that we may want to have that. So to say always you're only going to have to do 500 feet or whatever may not make sense for a particular gateway.
That's true. It's another way of looking at it. So maybe it's a blend, maybe it's both, but I think that way it might make it a little bit easier as far as, because there are property owners there already, and they probably have some ideas. And like you said, it may just be a race to see who gets there first. And if that, but if we just say that, okay, for this particular area, it just makes sense that we just have a certain amount of space dedicated, and then you could do whatever you want otherwise. I think that might help a lot more for those particular instances. And so any idea how many businesses would be grandfathered in at this point based on the ovals that you had designated?
Not looked at that.
Not yet? Okay. That's true. Otherwise, there's like already residential there or something, right? Yeah. Yeah, so since we already have that and as, you know, again, we're not worried about Alberta, but we are, you know, but there's going to be Lehigh and who knows, maybe, and probably not even north because we have Cap Williams there, but still, it would be nice to have something consistent and not necessarily put an immense burden on the property owner. So that's just my suggestion.
Okay.
I think that's it.
Thank you, Commissioner Kilgore. Commissioner Burns.
Yes, thank you. So why don't we have this for like residential stuff too? Like, is this, I mean, I guess this is kind of along the same vein of like, you know, we want to have an area when we come into the city that looks really nice. Is there a reason we didn't make some additional residential standards to that?
We do have limits in state code on some of that. So, and then a lot of these areas, we don't have residential in those areas on the map.
The state prohibits.
We
Out of that
we can't impose it on single family. So we can impose it on, Fred, we can impose it on attached product.
Yeah, it's multifamily and 3-family.
Okay, so we can impose standards on attached product, and we have standards in our code for that.
Okay, cool. And then with the parking, so obviously some of those ovals and circles were not quite narrowed in yet, but can you just go over the parking a little bit more? Because some of it included like some of those residential streets that,
Where's parking in here? Down or up? Up or down?
It's up.
Up, okay.
yeah, just walk me through the parking,
It
like
was right there,
No, you passed
Pass
it, yeah. Just before the charts.
a little bit down.
7.
Oh, okay,
There.
thanks.
So really, all we're looking at here is, we're trying to preserve that, the beautification of the street, the side of the street. What are you looking at? Do we, when we enter the community, do we want to look at a bunch of vehicles parked? Or do we want to have something that really has that impact of visual beautification? So if we don't allow cars parked on the street side of a gateway arterial, then that, we're going to have a better chance of having that effect. They'll just have to park in front of their building, or the side or the back or whatever that is not adjacent to the street.
Okay, okay, cool. Thanks. Yeah, if, just in that same vein of listing stores, they're also, on our city list, we do have like a shooting range, an indoor shooting range, cannabis stuff that would probably want to be included. I've prohibited things, and that was it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Commissioner Burns. Commissioner Ryan?
Sorry, am I jumping in front of anyone again?
Nope.
I just want to kind of echo that sentiment. Like, Ken, do you have in your mind like what you feel should be in these gateway over? I mean, you have tremendous professional experience, right? So I'm kind of echoing my own comments, Commissioner Kilgore's comments, not to put words in his mouth, but it feels like it's an easier approach is a thou should instead of thou shall not in some of these. So
Yeah.
we're definitely approaching this with the idea that, hey, we want to make sure that we have, like, I agree, something that defines our city. These are obviously some of the major corridors through the city. We want them to look good, essentially, I mean, bottom line. So it seems like in the back of my mind, like we have a vision, or whoever's driving this, or request came from the city council, perhaps they have a vision of what they would like to see there. I'm just wondering if there's anything we're missing in terms of the insight or direction that you've been given, so we can shape it more towards that versus trying to think of all the one-offs that we may or may not miss.
I think it's just a general, almost nebulous, or lack of vision, if you will, that we just have this desire to have more beautiful entryways. But I think to address your comment of what we should do instead of what we shouldn't do, that becomes a little bit more challenging when in all of these areas we have various types of zones. So each zone has its own list of permitted and prohibited uses. So it would be difficult to call out and say we want this type of development only in the entryways, well, that doesn't always make sense. So, so I guess we're just trying to say, okay, well, no matter what your zone says, you can do whatever that zone says, but except for these things.
Okay, that's a great point. I hadn't thought about that. Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Ryan. So pretty much everything I had was covered as well. I wanted to ask a question about the cannabis. Can we prevent them? I thought there was some verbiage in the state law that said that we weren't able to prevent them from being in certain zones. Am I wrong on that?
So we do. We only allow it in our industrial zone, so
Yeah.
it's right here on the table. There's just one proposed, I don't know that there's any areas on these proposed maps that would be in, okay, right here, just a little bit. So yeah, so this sliver coming down here, and this is coming from Eagle Mountain on the map, so this is West SR 73. We have a little bit of general industrial on our land use map. It's not currently zoned general industrial, so this is land use. And so that is one spot where in the future, if that is zoned industrial, that it could be allowed.
Okay. Cannabis shops.
Oh, cannabis.
Yeah.
So again, an overlay
Medical
being a
marijuana.
second level of zoning requirements, whatever is permitted by the underlying zone, then is modified by what we have up here. So if we do allow or don't allow cannabis in certain locations, then that is something that we can and do.
So then what the gateway overlay would do, if we added that to the list of items that can't be in the gateway overlay, then whatever we end up defining that area as, whether that's, the first 300 feet or whatnot, or it's an oval or whatever, then within that area, you couldn't have it, but then outside of, so assuming, since we have this up here, the red line, assuming that was the boundary, then you could have cannabis outside of that, but not inside of that.
Okay. Could you go to the Pony Express and Fairfield? Yeah, that one. The low-density residential in between the community commercial and the Lexington Green stuff. I thought that was like a field, and the farmer that owned it said that he didn't want to ever develop it. How did we get low-density residential there?
What's that? This one is zoning? This one is general plan?
Because I thought it was
Well,
agriculture.
I thought it's RA5. RA5?
Yeah, so this would be land
And
use.
this is land use map, so it's not zoned.
Okay.
It's not zoned low density, it's still agriculture, and he doesn't ever have to develop it if he doesn't ever want to. So. If he does. If he does.
I think that should be
for-
commercial.
For
It
some
shouldn't be low
reason,
residential.
he changed his mind or something, then he could potentially apply for that zoning.
Okay. Commissioner McConkey.
Just a clarification, so when a land use is designated, such as whether it's low-density residential or it's the industrial, if someone comes in and says, I want to zone, say, the industrial land use, I want to zone it industrial, then we have to say yes, correct?
No,
Because
we don't have to even
the
when.
land use was designated for that.
No, and Fred can speak to that. So even if it is on our general plan, we don't have to approve zoning.
That is correct. You don't.
So explain, sorry.
You would want to come up with some good findings to support your decision why not to do it according to the
Because
general.
a rezone is a legislative decision. And so if it's reasonably debatable that it's in the public interest, then they can say no.
Yeah, thanks.
All right. So it sounds like, are you done?
Yes.
Okay. So I think we're ready for a motion. Do we need to add something about looking at some of the verbiage we mentioned? Do we need to add that into the motion?
So the items I have down, I have that particularly, there was a sentence that was confusing about sorry, I think it was the the street, the front facade in the gateway overlay and the river waterfront buffer overlay. So I have down to separate that into 2 sentences to make that more clear. And then I have down that the, that's just a suggestion, sorry. Exclude additional uses was the note I made. I didn't write down all the recommended. And to use consistent terms, waterfront buffer overlay.
So basically, probably condition the things that Commissioner McConkey brought up and that you wrote down, and then everything else is just general discussion that would be part of the minutes or what will be discussed in front of the city council, is that right? Or do we need to condition what we said?
No, if you want the city council to consider it, you need to include it in your motion. Otherwise, it's just general discussion.
Okay.
Okay, if that's clear enough, we're ready for a motion. Or not.
I'll try to make the motion,
Okay.
if that's okay. I just passed it. Based upon the evidence and explanations received today, I move to approve the proposed amendment to Title 19 with the findings and conditions in the staff report dated October 20th, 2022, with additional conditions as have been discussed this evening regarding the rewording of section 19.16.10 1D1 and with
I had 1E1. Can we double check?
That was a.
1D.
1D1? Okay.
It was 1D1, but we
Okay,
did have a
1D1.
discussion on E1, the back of building
Okay.
question.
Yeah, 1E1.
Okay.
There's a question of,
Okay.
yeah. As well as including additional exclusions, as was discussed, in consideration of other exclusions that might be fitting for what we're trying to achieve. Also in there was a missing word "of" in section C under landscaping after 50%. What am I missing? There was one other thing, you and Ken.
Consistent terms
Oh, consistent terms.
for waterfront buffer overlay.
Yes. Am I
So-
missing anything?
We have a motion from Commissioner McConkey. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second, Commissioner Kilgore. Do we have a question on the motion? All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. That passes unanimously. I'll move to City Council.
That wasn't the most straightforward motion, but I think it,
Did good.
Okay, next item is a business item, Saratoga Springs Commercial Plat F, preliminary plat located approximately southeast of Lake Drive and Exchange Drive, Utah Valley Turf Farms, Daniel Schmidt as applicant, Gina Grand Prix is presenting.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm going to do this from here so I can do some plan of action notes. This application before you is the Saratoga Springs Commercial Plat F preliminary plat. It is a 13-lot commercial subdivision. And I forgot to put the location up in this slide. It is south of Crossroads Boulevard, east of Exchange Drive. And it includes, again, 13 lots. This is the site. This lot, the biggest lot is the future Home Depot site. If this plat is approved, the site plan you'll see tentatively on November 10th. So we're trying to get this going. Just to kind of go through it, they plan on phasing the development. So phase 1 is all of the tan, phase 2 will be all of the blue. The tan line that you see through phase 2 is an easement that they have to have in place for Home Depot. And so the developer will be installing that. The landscaping is going to be the detention basin. Now, there is a requirement in our code that 20% of all commercial development is landscaped. And so going back here, the lots along Redwood Road will have landscaping, but that will come through at each site plan. So each site plan will have 20% landscaping, but they are installing the trail along Redwood Road, and then the landscaping will be done on both sides. Similar to what we did on Crossroads Boulevard with Plat D, Saratoga Springs Plat D. The trail was installed, and then the site plans for that plat the landscaping was installed. This here is the overall site plan, so they will be put on this one of the lots down to the south. They plan on doing several buildings, so there will be multiple buildings. That is footprint development within regional commercial, so they do have that ability. But this kind of gives you an idea of what the layout of this is going to potentially be. Of course, each lot will have their own site plan, and therefore you'll see that at a later date. Other than that, staff recommends approval for the preliminary plat.
Thank you. Is the applicant here?
Yes.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Daniel Schmidt with WPI.
Do you have anything you would like to add to the presentation?
No, but I'll be happy to address any questions.
Okay, I will go ahead and turn this over to the commission for comments and questions. Commissioner Kilgore.
I don't remember pushing them.
Are you ready?
Welcome. This is an administrative process, so I always ask applicants for administrative processes if you are willing to comply with all the conditions in the city planning staff packet.
Yes, you bet.
Terrific. I noticed there was it does not comply for topography.
That was actually submitted, so I believe I included those in here. I don't know if you can see it. You can see that, yeah, you can. You can see the topography on there. It's a fairly flat parcel of land, so the detention basin essentially gives you all of that.
Terrific. Thank you for providing such a clean complies application, because it's rare, actually. But
I'd like to take credit for it personally, but we have a lot of good engineers on the home center side as well as work on that.
Well, thank you. It made looking through it very, very easy.
Yeah.
Very nice. Easy on the mind. There was several drawings near the end of this application. Where in the landscaping, I don't know if you could have any of those where it's green, the image was green, and then, there are, or at least on my packet, there were white lines in the lower green areas. I was wondering what those white lines were for.
So we had a different lot configuration initially, and then we worked with the applicant to have that moved. This has just not been updated, so you'll see some of those lines were, well, in the detention basin?
Yeah, it's those. This,
I think.
Oh yeah, you could see it.
Yeah.
They look like straight lines, and they have a little dog leg.
Okay.
And in our packet, they were very prominent. They were white, and each like section of that detention basin had those little white lines. And I didn't know if that was supposed to represent. There was no legend marking on it. And I didn't know if they were like a wall or if they were like
No,
pipe?
I'm not sure what they're,
No.
no.
Are they
I
dark?
think I know what you're talking about.
Little straight, look like,
This is just a rendering to give you an idea of what is potentially going into the site, so, or into these different, so you've got the buildings, they're just showing you the buildings as far as what potential buildings are going to go into.
I'm talking just in the green area,
Right.
green section, so
Oh, that's piping, I believe that, Jeff, is that right?
is it like drainage?
Yeah. The
Sorry.
detention basin is connected to each other, and so the pipes interconnect.
Oh, okay.
Sorry,
I've
thank you.
seen that before. Okay, so, all right, thank you. I was wondering if that was going to be some kind of a wall.
I know
or
what
something.
you're talking about.
Okay, that answers it. No issues there.
I thought you were referring to this here.
Yeah, it's hard, it's
Kind
not
of.
so obvious.
Yeah, it's
up
kind of
there.
in.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Kilgore. Just a sec, Commissioner McConkey.
my understanding correctly that Lake Drive ties into Redwood Road directly across from Commerce Drive?
So yes, and that was an addressing issue that Brian Gagos brought up. They had initially had it labeled as Commerce Drive, but with it being on the west side of Redwood Road, it was not allowed through our addressing. And then they changed it to Commerce Way, and Brian also nixed that and recommended that they take Lake Drive and bring it down and attach it
Okay.
to
So the
Woodward.
intersection is the same. Do they anticipate a light there?
No, I don't believe there will ever be a light there. Is not from my understanding. Jeff may be able to address that better.
Yeah, UDOT has said that there can only be one light between Crossroads and Medical Drive until the entire Mountain View corridor is constructed. And so the Medical Drive came first, so a light was installed there. But when Mountain View corridor gets constructed, there's potential that we could put in another light at Commerce.
Okay, so it's a while. Thank you. Parcel A, is that the detention
That's the
basin?
detention basin
Okay. I was a little confused on that.
on the table. Is that what you're looking at?
Yeah. And then the only other
Yeah.
comment I have is somewhat of a rhetorical comment, maybe some discussion later. Looking at some anticipated uses along that Redwood Road, the thought came to me that we're creating a restaurant row along Redwood Road, wondering if that's really what we wanted,
Oh, what? I'm sorry.
restaurant row. I don't know if that's really what we were anticipating, but
I don't know if
Unless-
that would be a question for the applicant. I'm not sure that would necessarily be all of those type of uses. It could be,
just looking at the concept that they had, you got drive-throughs and
right.
so forth, potentially of basically setting themselves up for that. So anyway, that was just I had a moment where I was driving down Redwood Road about a month and a half ago, and I suddenly had this realization, and it was, I mean, I realized it already, but it was like, this isn't the old Saratoga Springs that we moved here and loved, and I still love Saratoga Springs, but we've made the shift and it's not the same, and now we're looking at commercial and all these restaurants and so forth. Anyway, but that was the question that came into my mind, is that are we really going in the direction that we envisioned? So
Unfortunately, this is a regional commercial zone.
It is.
So unless you
it
restrict
is. That was zoned and
along Redwood Road,
and
right?
so forth. You never know what you're going to get, what it's going to look like.
Right,
It's the name of the game.
exactly.
So
Ken, did you have a comment?
That's just what I was going to say. Unless you have a master plan for a certain development area, you're going to get whatever is allowed in that zone.
yeah, totally agree.
Yeah.
It was just this suddenly these two moments that came and just kind of hit me. But hopefully we're doing good things. So we're certainly far from perfect, and the public certainly reminds us, and the staff, of course, all of us, that think we're doing a terrible job, but they really don't know what is going on. But I feel like we're doing an amazing job, to be honest. I'm really happy the general direction that things are going, excited for the development to come in. I think there is a tremendous amount of excitement, actually, among the public, looking forward to the things that you guys are bringing.
Great.
So we appreciate that, and we're grateful for the workability.
Great.
That's all I got.
Thank you, Commissioner McConkey. Commissioner Kilgore.
So I hesitated before I finished with my comments, because this really has nothing to do with the applicant. But you basically hit exactly what I was going to kind of mention. But I actually like the idea of a restaurant row because it's kind of like creating that downtown that we don't have right now, where someone could go and basically stroll, and and there's an option of restaurants they could go to, or different retail shops, and it's all along that Redwood Road. But I do have issues with that, in that we tried to protect the view from Redwood Road so that there's no parking lots there, and it's got nice landscaping and everything. But it's funny that we're protecting the view for cars that are just driving by, whereas the front of the stores are facing parking lots. And so it was something that my wife and I were just talking about, and this is all comments of the city to the planning staff, just as we try to figure out, we had a question, what do we want the downtown area to look like? And we all have different opinions, but maybe this is one of the things that becomes our, one of the things that, either like this or not like this, but it's a touchstone. But the idea, though, that when we sit in an outdoor space at some of the restaurants that are in that row, you're sitting on a sidewalk next to a huge parking lot. Whereas the back of the building is where all the nice landscaping, which faces Redwood Road. Just drivers who are just driving right by, it looks nice. But the people who are actually patronizing this store are sitting with nice tents and nice little area, but it's all just parking lot. And that's where I just think that it would be nice if we could somehow figure out a way where it is nice to just stroll down that restaurant row and be able to eat outside or indoors and have a kind of a nicer view. And so maybe that's the kind of thing that we think about as we're planning for the downtown area. I don't want you guys to change what you're doing, because that's exactly what it looks like now, and you don't want to make it any different. And you can't put the parking lot behind the building. But it's just one of those things where it's great that there's a place where you can go now and at least walk down that road, but then when you sit down, it's like parking lot as your view. So let's just think about that. But it's kind of nice, though, that we have that option, that we're starting to have that option, thanks to builders like you, developers like you. So that was a comment that I thought I'd make during the commission comments, but I just wanted to just go with what you were saying, and I had the same kind of thoughts as well. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Kilgore. I will entertain a motion.
Could I?
Yes, go ahead.
Quickly, we had a quick conversation with Jeff about maybe a small modification to one of the recommendations that Jeff can speak to. It would have to come from staff, but it's number 5.
Yeah. There is an electrical line that runs along the south border of their property. Our standard is to have that buried. But what I've just been told is that that line is potentially being looked at to be retired by Rocky Mountain Power because it only serves like 6 customers at this time. And so we could modify that to state that the lines shall be buried or removed.
Where is that?
It's a condition
In the
5.
engineering staff.
Wait on this.
On the engineering report.
It's on the attached. Yeah.
Okay,
that-
okay.
Okay.
Sorry, I was just looking at the motions.
I think that if it's not there, then it's not there. There's nothing to bury. So I don't know if the necessarily the verbiage needs to change. If it's there, then it would be buried.
Yeah, our concern is when the plat gets recorded with these conditions, the line will be there.
The line is there now.
And it is being removed, and the timing of that is being clarified with Rocky Mountain Power. But anyway, so just a small
That'd be fine.
modification.
So we need to add that as a condition.
And Jeff, he's comfortable with that?
Yeah, what we would do is bond for it, either the burial or the removal, so that the bond wouldn't be able to be released until that one of those two options was done.
So, but the line, by the time the development is completed for the first tenant, which is probably going to be Home Depot, I'm guessing, the line will be one or the other? The line will be gone?
We don't have the exact timing of that yet with Rocky Mountain Power, but the alternate lines are being put in place along Medical Drive with IHC, adjacent IHC development. And Rocky Mountain Power is getting back to us, but we just thought, you know, it's a significant cost to bury, and the clarification of timings being there. It's all sort of now-ish, at least in terms of Rocky Mountain Power's time frames. We're not sure what's going to quite come first just yet.
Sure.
Yeah.
So does the city put a time frame on that bond then, on when it has to be completed by?
I believe prior to occupancy, the bond would have to be released. I can look into that really quick.
We can even make that a condition, I suppose.
And we're happy to come back and address it further in terms of bond clarification for timing and other kinds of things when those are known issues. But reading through staff's recommendations, we just thought, day one, it's an unknown, and we don't want to be obligated to bury it day one.
Especially if it's coming out.
Yeah, especially if it's just coming out anyway.
Right, is that,
Yeah, I think that's, Jeff, you're fine with that, right? I think that's an easy addition.
So we're just adding, or, that it would be, developer shall bury or remove the distribution lines and any overhead utilities that are within adjacent to this plat. Is that correct?
Yes.
Is that what we're doing? Yeah.
okay, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion, I guess.
Oh, Fred wants to,
Yeah, just to reiterate, they will be bonding for it. So it'll be part of what they're bonding for. And those bond agreements do have a time period for performance, and there's also a warranty period. So it'll be a maximum of 24 months is the performance period.
So that doesn't have to be in the condition because it's already going to be in the agreement?
No, I think it should be in the condition that it's either going to be buried or removed.
No, I mean the timeframes, because we're asking about timeframes.
Yeah,
That
I
doesn't
don't
have to
think
be in there,
I
'cause
don't
that's
think
going
the
to be part of the
timeframe
agreement.
needs to be in the condition.
Because the city can't go beyond
Jeff, what do you think?
Yeah, this will be required before beginning warranty, so it won't tie up occupants or anything, but they can't go into warranty until it's done. So,
Isn't there a statutory limit on how long a city can bond for?
There is.
Yep, 24 months, and then plus the warranty period, which is 12 months, a year.
Yeah, okay.
okay.
I move that the planning commission forward a recommendation of approval to the city council regarding the preliminary plat of Saratoga Springs Commercial Plat F, southeast of Lake Drive and Exchange Drive, based upon the findings and conditions in the staff report, with the added condition that in the city engineer staff report, line 5, that we, or remove after the word bury, so it reads, developer shall bury or remove. Is that correct?
We have a motion from Commissioner McConkey. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Have a second from Commissioner Ryan. Do we have a question on the motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Okay, that passes unanimously. Thanks.
Thank you.
Staff in the city, the process has been unusual, been a heavy burden for everyone to move through expeditiously. A lot of moving parts, and staff has been great to work with the accelerated timelines and sort of the load requirement associated with that. We recognize that and appreciate it as well.
Thank you.
Okay, next item is approval of the minutes. Anybody have any changes they want to turn in for the minutes? If not, I will go ahead and entertain a motion to approve the minutes for September 22nd meeting.
Commissioner Ryan, I move to approve the minutes for Thursday, September 22nd, 2000.
Motion from Commissioner Ryan. Do we have a second on the motion?
I'll second that.
We have a second from Commissioner Burns. Any question on the motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed, say nay. That passes unanimously. Minutes are approved. Next item is training for the Open and Public Meetings Act from Fred Donaldson, our Assistant City Attorney.
And then
I know this
can
is
you just
the-
set your 3-minute timer?
Presentation you've all been waiting for. Yeah, here we are together. So I won't keep you too long, and we can go through this expeditiously. Let's go to the first slide. Do I have the ability to? Oh, okay. Thank you. I don't know how, but, well, there it is. Okay. So the Open and Public Meetings Act is a set of laws here in the state that governs meetings of public bodies. And as the name of the code represents, it's the intention of the legislature that all meetings be conducted openly and deliberations are done openly. Therefore, meetings of public bodies are open to the public unless properly closed, and they can only be closed for certain reasons. We'll go through that a little bit more. Again, the law favors openness. So the first question is, what is a meeting? So it's a convening of a public body with a quorum present, meaning a simple majority. Includes a workshop or executive session for the purpose of discussing, receiving comments from the public on, or acting on any matter over which the public body has jurisdiction or advisory power. Can be in person, electronic, or hybrid. It's not a meeting when you meet at Walmart accidentally, or when you're talking to each other on the street or something like that. A meeting is not a chance gathering. And it's not a meeting of a public body with legislative and executive responsibilities if no public funds are appropriate and the meeting is solely for operational matters where no formal action is required and the matter would not come before the public body. That doesn't really apply too much to this, to you all. So a public body means a administrative, advisory, executive, or legislative body that was created by the Constitution, statute, rule, ordinance, or resolution, consists of 2 or more persons, spending or supported by tax money, and has authority to make decisions about the public's business. Some of them here in the city are the City Council, Planning Commission, the Library Board. So there are notice requirements, and Nikki does a great job with notice for our public meetings here in the city and open and public meetings.
Can I ask a question?
Go ahead.
So this is really interesting. Appreciate this. So let's say Commissioner Sprosty Burns and I see each other at Walmart, and we start talking about some of the issues that are coming up in the next Planning Commission meeting.
Not a public meeting.
And it's not a problem.
Not a problem. Yep.
I didn't realize that. Oh, okay. So, I mean,
4 of us show up and we.
Yes, that would be a problem.
Problem, right?
Yeah, you would not be able to do that if you're all convening,
The majority.
A chance, what it says, and I'll go back, is it says,
Well, even if it's just a majority of us, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
it says, it does not include a chance meeting or social gathering. So
okay.
if it's like, let's by chance meet at Walmart, then it's not a chance meeting. Okay, so.
Thank you.
But a social gathering, as long as we're not discussing anything.
You're not, deciding the pub,
Party at Commissioner Kilgore's.
yeah, you can.
Barton's,
Yes,
Barton's where we want to go.
Barton's house, okay.
a social gathering is okay, as long as you don't discuss the public's business or make decisions or spend any money, you should be okay. Notice, are we there? Okay, yeah. So 24-hour notice is required. The notice has to include the agenda, the date, time, and place of the meeting. The agenda must be reasonably specific. So it's not enough to say, we'll be discussing public business or something like that. It needs to be a little more specific than that. A body may discuss a matter not on the agenda raised by the public, but may not take final action on the matter at the meeting. So you couldn't vote on something that was not on the agenda. Notice posted at City Hall, on the city website, public's notice website, and sent to a newspaper or media correspondent. Encouraged to provide notice through other electronic means, and a schedule must be noticed, and we have that on our website. So for emergency meetings, you're not required to give 24 hours. I don't think the Planning Commission will likely ever have a need for an emergency meeting, but you never know, I guess. If unforeseen circumstances require an emergency meeting, you have to still give notice as much as practicable and attempt to notify the members of the public, and then a majority of the members of the public body have to approve the meeting. Minutes are kept of all meetings. Nikki keeps those. She does a great job. They include the date, time, and place, the names of all the members, present and absent, substance of all the matters proposed. And you see those each meeting, and then you approve them the meeting after. So, very good. They weren't very complete, and so it was a real conundrum that they found themselves in. This was their quorum. So we keep good written minutes, and again, we should be fine. There is a way to satisfy the requirements related to minutes by keeping the recording and providing it at a link.
Could you just
Go ahead.
Could you go back to
Sure.
the last slide? I want to see that thing about the courts. Courts don't look at anything less unless ambiguous.
Yeah, they don't look at anything other than the minutes.
Okay.
Unless the minutes are ambiguous. See, that's what happened in that situation was the minutes were ambiguous, and so then they're like, okay, well, what really happened? What was really decided? So, yeah. All right. Minutes are classified as public under GRAMA, which is the Government Records Access Management Act. Pending minutes must be made available to the public within 30 days. And then they're posted, approved minutes and public materials are posted on the public notice website, made available at City Hall, and posted on the city website within 3 days after approval. Meetings are recorded. Again, the recording must be complete and unedited. It's a public record under GRAMA. And within 3 days of holding a meeting, the recording must be made available to the public for listening, can be posted on the website, can be made available at City Hall, posted on the city's website. What's that?
Is the recordings, are they permanent forever?
No, they're subject to the records retention policy. I don't know how long we keep them.
There's 3 years?
Maybe 1 year. Yeah. We'd have to pull up the records retention policy, but it has its own policy.
Can the recordings be edited in any way?
No.
What about, how long do we leave stuff on YouTube? Is it just a year?
Sorry.
The recording is her audio recording. That is the official recording. The YouTube is for the public to participate and see what's happening, but it's not the official recording of the meeting.
That's the importance of having your mic on when you talk.
Right, yeah. Okay, electronic meetings can be by phone, computer, or other electronic means. Notice requirements are still applicable. There's still a requirement to have an anchor location. The legislature did during COVID make an exception when there's a public health emergency, but that has to be announced, that there's a public health threat that requires that, or that allows us to not have an anchor location. Members of the public must have a means to attend or participate. The public body has to adopt a resolution, rule, or ordinance governing the use of electronic meetings, and we have an ordinance that governs electronic meetings here in the city. This is something interesting. Members of a public body cannot transmit text messages or emails or instant messages to other members of the public body during an open. So you're not allowed to text each other during the open meeting. You can text each other after the open meeting, but not during the open meeting.
That they were texting to each other and they grandma requested and got all their text messages. on
Right.
the school board. Yeah.
Yeah, and they want, again, when you look at the purpose of the public meetings is that deliberations and discussions are done openly. And if people are messaging each other back and forth during the meeting, then that's frustrated by that. Okay, we're gonna go to, whoops. Oh yeah, I did add this slide that if a person is disrupting the meeting to the extent that orderly conduct is seriously compromised, they can be removed. So hopefully that doesn't happen.
So if that does happen, who do we have remove?
I think we would probably want to have a police officer come and help with that. And typically, I think we'll know if, well, I guess not always.
Well, there's one per individual that concerns me that's been here a number of times.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, well, if, yeah, I don't know what we should do. We can ask him to,
It's actually, it's a her.
you could ask that them to leave themselves if, again, if orderly conduct is seriously compromised. If they refuse, then I think, yeah, the only choice would be to have a police officer come and escort them out.
I guess staff could contact the police during that, right?
Yeah, it might take a while, yeah. Okay, so closed meetings. Again, meetings are open to the public unless closed. No local government meetings are required to be closed, so it's kind of an optional thing. It's discretionary. Reasons for closing a meeting: to discuss the, excuse me. Oh, did I skip a slide? Wait. I think I might have reorganized my presentation. Okay, so to close a meeting, or in a closed meeting, a quorum of the public body must be present. 2/3 must vote to approve it. You have to hold an open meeting first before closing it, and the body must be publicly announced and entered. The vote must be publicly announced and entered into the minutes. So the reasons for holding the closed meeting have to be entered into the minutes, the location of the closed meeting, the vote by name of each member for or against the closed meeting. And the closed part of the meeting also has to be recorded, except in very rare situations. And these are the reasons why you can close a meeting. Yeah, go ahead.
Really quick that I thought was interesting, I just went through this for another place where I serve, but like on the 66% threshold, you don't readily capture that, because like on a board of 5 people, I just need 3 out of 5. Well, that only gets you to 60%. You actually have to get to that.
You have to have 4 out of 5.
Which is like intuitively you don't think that, and so it's just important to remember like that's a higher standard than your brain kind of initially.
So it's not just a simple majority, it's a 2/3 majority. So that's true. Some reasons for closing a meeting: discussing the character, competence, or physical and mental health of an individual, imminent litigation, security personnel. I think I've been here now a year and 7 months or so, and we haven't had an occasion to close a meeting and haven't had the need to. The city council closes meetings routinely. quite often to discuss personnel matters and to discuss other types of matters that can be discussed in closed meetings. So, and I can make this presentation available. I can email it to you if you would like, and then you'll have it. During a closed meeting, a public body may not approve an ordinance, resolution, rule, regulation, contract, or appointment, interview a person to fill an elected position, discuss the character, competence, or physical mental health of an applicant to fill a midterm vacancy. Again, can't take final action on a matter. Final votes must be open and on the record. So even if you were in a closed session and you were discussing a matter, but then you wanted to take a vote on the matter, you would have to open the meeting again and then take a vote on the matter that was discussed during the closed part of the meeting. No. As long as it was on the agenda, the matter that was being discussed. So, let's see. Oh, yeah. Here we are. Violations. A knowing or intentional violation of the Open Meetings Act is a Class B misdemeanor. I don't think it gets prosecuted very often. I'm pretty sure it never has been. Court can void any action taken in violation of the Open Meetings Act, and a violation can be cured in a subsequent meeting. But if someone does file a lawsuit and you have to cure the violation, then the public body may have to pay court costs and attorney's fees. This is enforced by the Attorney General and the county attorney, and a private citizen, again, can file a lawsuit, and there are limitations on when they have to file. So, are there any questions? That's it. Yeah.
Luckily, I already got this similar thing from Nikki years ago, so she's so good at stuff like that.
Well, and you're going to get this again every year from the city attorney's office. So,
Thanks.
all right.
Thanks, Fred.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks. Commission comments.
I have a comment.
Yes.
I always have a comment. I know sometimes in our deliberations and so forth, sometimes I worry that maybe the staff feels that we're either ungrateful or maybe don't exercise good judgment in whatever they're presenting or whatever. And I just want to make sure, I was just thinking of some past planning commission meetings over the last, how long have I been in here? 2.5 years almost. Doesn't happen very often, I don't think, but I just wanted to make sure it was clear that we appreciate you guys and recognize your professionalism, your patience with us. Ken's not here, but we just are grateful for that and grateful to have you guys on our staff. Grateful for your experience, and I'm grateful for the commission. I think that we agree and disagree really well. So, which unfortunately, there certainly are other jurisdictions that don't have that blessing. So I just want to thank you guys. Kind of usually the highlight of my 2 weeks, to be honest with you. So.
Thanks, Commissioner McConkey. Just a quick note on commission meetings. I'm going to try to do better as far as not allowing applicants to, go on and on and on and on. I'm trying to cut them off. One of the things I want to do is when it's our time, unless you guys specifically have a question for the applicant, I'm not going to allow them to speak. That makes sense? And then the other thing is we kind of need to watch how we interact with the public. Sometimes we've gone a little bit overboard a little bit. And that's why one of the reasons I asked about removing somebody, because there is one individual that's come several times and has been quite vocal
So really during our meeting, there shouldn't be any interaction with us talking to the public at all, right? Is that how that works?
Correct.
Okay.
Right.
Like there
They-
shouldn't be anything that we're discussing with them,
Correct.
asking or anything.
Yeah, when they get to make their time, to make their comment, and then if we choose to answer those questions during our time, then we can.
But we don't have to, like it's
Right,
not-
that's my understanding. We don't necessarily have to. Most of the time, we try to. I have noticed that the city council doesn't always address things that
Right.
come up. I think one of my favorite comments is the city needs to do something about the kids in the city because they're not active enough and they're getting overweight. It's like, okay, fine, I'm not going to comment on that.
Right.
It's not really relevant to whatever we're doing, but yeah,
Okay.
that's kind of stuff.
And it seems that the way that we interact as human beings, we usually talk to whoever has a question, but it's a little different in a meeting that we're not necessarily talking to them, we're just discussing topics. I know I think it was when one of the videos the state puts out that, I think it was, or maybe it was a book that I read, addressing the chair, the commission chair, rather than the applicant. I don't know.
Yeah, Commissioner Ryan does a real good job of that. But I think it's permissible if you have a comment specifically for the applicant, go ahead and ask the applicant, then I'll allow them to talk. Or the other thing is if there's somebody that made a comment, you want to get more information, it's okay to say, hey, Mr. Chair, can I have Mr. whoever in the audience come back and give us some more information about something? That's permissible.
Sounds great.
And the other thing is, we kind of touched a little bit on it. When we're asking questions of the city, let's remember that we're sort of on the same team, but we're not, so let's not do anything that's, I don't ask a question that kind of puts the city on the defensive, maybe. Kind of try to word your questions so that, give me more, like tonight, I think we did a really good job. Can you help me out on the parking? What exactly are you meaning by I think we did a really good job on that. Any other commission comments? Then it's the director's report.
Okay, great. We do, for the two items that were presented tonight, we have reports of action. And I actually do we just have the chair sign that at the end? There's a spot for a chair signature. We haven't done reports of action for so long.
I know one of the things we used to do is we put the comments up to make sure that the comments match what everybody said. And we usually put those on the screen.
Okay, our.
Can we do that?
System has changed. We can do that. I wish it was saved.
We just need to make sure that everybody's, they feel like their comments were put in.
Okay.
So I just put down the key points that were brought up. I didn't
Okay.
put everybody's comments.
Sorry. Why is it so hard to navigate on here?
It has been a long time since we've done a
Weird.
report of action.
Put it in the project folder.
A report of action. I'm trying, the one I remember had, yeah, it was Kimber. Fred, did you have a comment? Kimber was the last one I remember doing it. That's a long time ago. Did David?
A couple times. It
Okay,
took forever.
right.
I don't think Sarah's going to take that long.
Fred, did you have a comment?
Yes, I was trying to remember if reports of actions were covered in your bylaws. And I thought they were, but
You're totally old school there on the bylaws.
I know.
Well, he's
That's good. 3-ring binder.
clicking the page. It's not making fun of you. It's the system.
No control F, right? To find out you're like,
That's right.
Have you all reviewed the bylaws? Do you have a copy of them and everything?
They're on the Dropbox.
Yeah. And I was just going to recommend reviewing them and
We used to take longer to do our minutes, but Nikki will have them done ahead of council, so we don't need to.
Okay. That's usually,
So-
we would do those
You.
because
We used to do them, so for these two items, we've put them on the upcoming council meeting, which is just 2 business days from now, or, it's Tuesday. And so in the past, minutes wouldn't have been ready by then, so we did reports of action, but in this case, Nikki will have the minutes ready, so we're fine. So we don't need to do the reports of action. Okay, there are some other director items. So we sent out an email about a statewide growth workshop on November 7th. A couple of you replied that you're going. I just wanted to make sure everybody saw the email. And then if you can go, it's Monday, November 7th from 4 to 7, and dinner will be served. And there in the email, there's an email address to RSVP. So I'm just double checking. It ends at 7, right? Is that what you guys heard? 4 to 7. So 3 hours. So it's long, but they invited all of the planning commission councils across the whole state. So you're definitely welcome to attend if you have time. And then, so the last city council meeting, they reviewed several of the items that came here, had been forwarded. And that was, and so I just want to give you an update on the decisions that were made. So that was, their meeting was, this is a summary of the October 18th city council meeting. So Saratoga Commons rezone and preliminary plat were approved. Alpine Springs IADU map amendment, that was the one to allow the accessory units. That was approved. And then there was a rezone on the southwest corner of Pioneer Crossing from regional commercial to heavy commercial, and that was approved. So those, and then a wildflower major amendment that was approved. So those items were all approved. And then our next.
Can I just say, it's so nice to hear. I usually don't have time to watch or attend city council meetings, so a lot of times, I don't know about you guys, don't really know what the end result is. So thank you, really.
Sure. On the IADU topic, I know it was a longer discussion here. One of the reasons the council was comfortable approving it was because everyone who bought in would know when they moved in. So one of the heartburns that council has had with IADUs is adding it to neighborhoods after the fact, because they feel like that's not fair to people who bought into a neighborhood where it wasn't allowed. So in this particular situation, they were more comfortable approving it because people buying and moving in would know. And then the applicant will include one in their model home. So once you see their model home up, if you're interested in taking a look, anybody's welcome to stop by, or they can set up a scheduled visit if you want. So then our next planning commission is November 10th. We have a whole handful of code amendments for you. It's funny because we have, and then possibly the Home Depot site plan if everything's ready there. I was going to say the code amendments are kind of funny because we have 4 of them, but it's probably going to be 4 staff reports, even though it's all code amendments. The Viviana, we will also have another item. The Viviano Community Plan Amendment. Okay, thanks. And then there was one more thing I had written down. Oh no, that was everything that I have for Director's Report.
Hey, Chair, would I be out of order if I ask about the breakfast?
Oh yeah.
I wasn't able to attend. I didn't know if anything significant or anything.
That would be great. We had a breakfast with planners this morning. We had 3 discussions. So one was on the general plan and land use map, one was on transportation, and then one on the strategic plan that we're going to be doing for our city center area, our downtown town center. I'm not sure what term we're going to use there. And we had the consulting firm that's been selected come and give a presentation. And then the groups were able to switch. So we started off in one big group and went over the general plan, and then we split into 2, one for transportation and one for the town center, and then we switched. So everybody got a chance to hear everything. We had 42 people sign in. We think there were about 50 people there because not everybody signed up. 2 of our commissioners were able to attend. We had Oh, 3. I didn't even see you.
That's because they only wanted to hear about the city center plan.
Oh, okay, so 3. So we had Commissioner Cunningham and Ryan and Burns. So if you guys want to add any comments, that'd be great.
I may have left early to play golf with Telescope, staring at it.
There's
no reason
not to do that.
Yeah, those views are beautiful from that
5 degrees
clubhouse.
outside.
I was the only person on the entire course. It was awesome. I did have a inquiry and then a request, if it's possible, I know we had like a couple commissioners serve on the general plan update. If there's a similar task group formed around the downtown city center, I would love to volunteer myself,
Okay, great.
selfishly, on that.
No, Gina, stop looking at me.
So if that does happen with the consulting firm and like staff, and if there's an
So
opportunity.
that one is being led by Doug, our Economic Development Director, but I'll pass that on.
When we hear, what is it, the folks who spoke at the breakfast for the city center planning, will we hear that as part of the commission as well? Will they are they going to be scheduled to come in and do a presentation? Because I like to hear that as well.
Like we did with the that's a good question. Let me follow up on the process so I'm a little bit better informed.
They had a timeline on the sheet that they had specifically for it. So right now it's kind of all very preliminary stuff. So I don't think, they have been hired and they're consultants. I think they have an architectural background, the lead guy. And I think they're just kind of forming it all right now. So I don't know if they'd have much to present on other than they just have general ideas that they feel like the downtown should have. And they solicited thoughts. I mean, it was very, they could have kept going, but we hit that time frame for the switch. So there's a lot there, a lot of feedback there, but I don't know if they have anything formalized yet.
No problem.
Was there anything, like, the feedback and ideas were coming from citizens?
Yeah, from citizens.
Is there any really interesting ones that we should hear?
I think it was like keep it walkable, keep a downtown feel. Like I thought the one that was really good was being able to keep a downtown feel, like somewhere to go to where you have all the things that would be interesting to the city in terms of like the guys, the consultant said to really have an effective downtown, you want it to be active for 18 hours out of the day. I thought that was really interesting as well. And so couple that with one of the citizens' comments was, well, I want to have like a Main Street downtown feel. And I think that's important as well, something where people feel like you're home, right? Where you can identify your city.
One of the other comments that I liked was somebody mentioned dark skies. And they didn't want to have the big electronic billboard sign. And I thought that was a good one.
Yeah, because he said, I can see him across the lake and I don't want him.
Yeah.
I thought that was good.
Yeah.
Is there, this is probably super early to ask this question, but is there any plan to have like a hotel or accommodations of that kind in that downtown plan area?
I think it's something we would anticipate having. What we're doing with the strategic plan is coming up with goals and objectives for that. And then as development comes in, we need to be in a partnership with them. They have to agree, right? So we hope so.
The one thing as well is I didn't know on the map, felt to me like we have a selection now of like the actual area where we downtown, which is really good as well. So we've kind of settled that question. And I think it's in a great spot. It's where a lot of the major roads are, crisscrossing. So it's good.
I would also like to be on that kind of if they're taking planning commissioners, I'd like to be on that as well.
Okay.
I submit my name.
Yeah, I will submit your names. Okay.
I did the general plan.
Gina, I already said
Somebody
no.
else needs a turn.
Yeah, you're excluded, Mr. Chair, so is Commissioner McConkey. Some of us, others.
I'd love to be a part of it, but I don't want to, do everything. But
I want to get one of these awesome stainless steel tumblers here, man. I gotta
Oh, truth comes out.
Yeah, selfish desire.
Well, somebody asked me, how come you're not listening to the general plan discussion? I said, because I lived it
Because
last
I've
year.
been part of it, hours and hours of it.
I will follow up with Doug and then I'll get back with both of you.
I think overall, though, really appreciate again staff hosting those events, even though I think the other one had more people to it, but this one still had, in my mind, a significant number of people that were interested, and so it's just great to have those every now and then. It's well done on the part of the city.
I love them. I think it's great. I think it's a really good opportunity for citizens to like share what they want in a less formal meeting like this, which is intimidating.
Do you think we're leaving out, so the time is what I think is hard for people to attend. So, you know what I'm saying?
The time is, okay.
Like, I feel like we'd
This is a
get more
good
citizens
question.
out there if we could have it like in the early,
An evening?
yeah, in the
It's a
evening.
really
when
good
people-
question. So during our general plan update, we held open several different times, and this time is the highest attended.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
So we held them at noon and we held them in the
Obligation night and stuff
evenings.
like that,
Our
yeah.
least attended times were the evenings.
Okay.
So very
No,
interesting.
that's good to know. I was wondering that. Okay.
Yeah, and you have a very good point. A lot of people have, it's like, why is that time higher attended? We have no idea. But it's
Less
the
kids, I
highest
think, maybe, right?
attended. Yeah, and we had.
You have some of the developers there too, though, at those meetings.
There are, yeah. We had, so during our general plan process, we had 2 evening meetings. 8 people attended.
Okay.
Yeah, on the highest night.
Right.
So, and then we had lunchtime meetings as well. And anyhow, we geared one of those towards seniors, and we had a decent attendance, and we also provided food. So,
Okay, no, that's actually good to know. I just was wondering, because I know we've had them at different times, so I wasn't sure on the, okay, thanks.
Anything else?
I won't be here on the 10th.
Okay. Do we need to go into a closed session tonight?
we do not.
Then this meeting stands adjourned until November 10th, correct?
I don't think I'm going to be here on.
Okay.
As long as we have 4 of you, we're okay.